Do you want to know where the journey of human commenced? Then look. 10,000 years ago, as one with nature, moving in harmony with other animals, the first step of human. This is the humanity era. This was a time of no barriers like nations or boundaries. It was a world that is still a few thousand years before the advent of kings and kingdoms. In this era, society was run by the constitution of humanity. All humans belonged to one race, the human race. People lived as small groups with no differences of caste or creed. Everyone prospered whilst working to their individual capacity and sharing as per requirement. There was no gender discrimination. There was no differentiation or modesty between men and women. For a couple to unite, the prerequisites were just desire and companionship. The people of this era would live like birds that come together to build their nest, hatch their eggs, and protect their offspring, and then fly away in different directions as soon as the fledglings were strong enough to take wings. These were the people untouched by narrow-minded thoughts of my property or my children. This was a beautiful matriarchal society. There was no need to teach respect for women specifically. Morality was not written down anywhere. Even religion was not founded yet. It was a culture where they worshipped the river that quenched their thirst, the earth that fed them, and the trees that gave them shade. In this era was born the Sindhu civilization. From the Aryan invasion to the Upanishads, Aryans arrived in search of these golden lands. But who are these Aryans? They were nomads from what we now call the Central Asiatic region, who migrated aimlessly in all directions. The Vedic era was born when they carried to the Sindh region, where the Vedas were born on the banks of the river Surasthi. The Aryans, who were used to living in the grasslands for thousands of years, migrated here with their domesticated horses and cows. That is why their sustenance depended mainly on cows, their milk, and their meat. With just the selfish aim of keeping the cows and their produce to themselves, they perpetrated the belief that the cow is holy and needs to be worshipped, and all the while they themselves grew intelligent, feeding on the dairy products, and became strong, consuming their meat. Our countrymen, who have the quality to respect and embrace everyone, made these people also a part of their own community. Thus the canny Aryans mingled freely with the peaceful locals, utilizing their own acumen and strength to divide the people. The first division the Aryans initiated under the guise of uplifting the society was between the male and the female. Men and women who until that point in time were living with equal responsibilities and love were separated. A pregnant lady must be served and looked after well during 9 months of a pregnancy by the men, failing which not only the society but the entire humanity will cease to exist, they said. And under the guise of giving birth to women's rights, men were burdened with hundreds of customs and responsibilities. Similarly, when not pregnant, the women folk were responsible for looking after the homes and the children, they said. With this, they made women also come under the weight of numerous customs. Laying down rules and restrictions for everything, the Aryans created the first division of humans by prescribing how men and women have to even sit, stand, and behave in a society, by defining different tasks and roles for both. Religion per se was not yet born during this period. The Vedas themselves formed the constitution, and the Aryans asserted the truth of the Vedas as a truth for everyone. Based on the 5 elements, Panchabhutas, the Aryans brought in a few new deities to the people, like the sun god, Surya Dev, god of fire, Agni Dev, and the god of gods, Indra Dev. If lifestyle during this period had to be defined, it is that the people who were living as small sections or groups worked hard to the extent of their intellect and skill, and manufactured products. Some of them took these products across to different sects and groups and traded them. Similarly, to protect people and their settlements from wild animals, there used to be some courageous and strong men. Some intelligent people used to work for the welfare and management of these groups. Noting this, the Aryans, understanding the Vedas, plotted to divide society into 4 sections. Firstly, they convinced everyone that the aim of the Vedas is to build an ideal society, wherein a caste was decided by one's ability and one's duty by his caste. Those who used the intellect to manage the society were described as Brahmins, and the Aryans themselves joined them. Those who guarded the region with their strength were described as Kshatriyas. Those for whom trading was a profession were described as Vaishyas. All those who were farming or working as laborers were described as Shudras. Thus, for the first time in the world, human society was divided into 4 sections, and the poisonous seeds of the caste system were sown. Thus, the Aryans transformed into Arya Brahmins and started running the society in line with their ideologies. Slowly, as selfishness, profiteering, and anger grew among the people, the Arya Brahmins who were running the society from above got even stronger. Some hundreds of years passed thus, and there arose a need for a new constitution in line with the changes. This started the Upanishad era. With the Vedas as the constitution and the Upanishads as the law, the Aryans transformed the sects and groups into kingdoms. To mind the kingdoms, they nominated Kshatriyas with arms and armies as kings, and convinced people that whatever the king utters is an edict and the people are duty bound to obey it. They frightened the people, saying that the king could punish or even all those that revolted against these orders. They nominated Kani Brahmins to advise the kings and kingdoms as Rajgurus. Hundreds and thousands of customs were invented, and human divide and apathy was nurtured. Thus, they led a life wherein only food, sleep, and material comforts were seen as the ultimate goals. At this time, Crown Prince Siddhartha Gautama entered this world filled with violence, cruelty, crime, and sin. He was disillusioned by the humans, brimming with selfishness, apathy, and divisiveness, and renounced the world. Gautama, with the traits of humanity era in his blood, sought to find the world within himself, rather than finding himself in this world, and attain enlightenment as the Buddha. He shook up the society of the day by saying that all of the knowledge required for humans is within themselves. There is no need to seek out any sacred book or person. The teachings of the Buddha, like Panchashila, Ahimsa, Ashtanga Marg, made people think. Those who still had the blood of humanity era running through their veins understood his words. They realized that the Vedas and the Upanishads are instigating crime in them, and decided to discard them and live as true humans. They adopted Buddhism and took it to different corners of the world. They taught the world that if we improve ourselves, society can cure itself. The caste system was demolished, and it was likely that the king-kingdom structure would collapse as well. As the society reached a point where the people started questioning their 1,000 years of supremacy, the Aryans were shaken and went running to the kings and the Rajgurus. The kings and the Rajgurus were slaves to their sense of entitlement and to their comforts, and they felt threatened that they might lose these because of Buddhism, and that yajnas, yagas, and worship were the only ways to ensure these comforts for themselves. Thus, they were incited against the Buddhists. The violence that started in some poor kingdoms slowly spread across the entire landmass of Bharat. The disciples of the Buddha and the practitioners of Buddhism were hounded, punished, imprisoned, or even executed where necessary. Their effort was to eradicate Buddhism entirely from the society. To imprison the common man in eternal hope, unprovable concepts like previous birth, rebirth, fate, conscience, and superconscience were created. After a while, they said that the teachings of the Buddha and the Vedas were the same, that Buddha is also a god, and tried making him one of the Dashavataras. They tried getting Buddhism under the Sanatana Dharma. Thus, using fear, violence, treachery, they brought the society under their own control again. They drew up a lot of customs and made laws by the Upanishads, wherein those defying them were punished severely. They convinced the people that it is being done for virtue and for the religion. Thus, depending on others' labor, enjoying food, sleep, and material comforts, the Aryans re-established the king-kingdom structure. This time, they built a new society that was fully under their control. This was the religion era. During this period, the Aryans spread religion all over. They rewrote the religious customs and beliefs so that the people needed to depend on them for all, including birth, death, and everything in between. People were kept busy with festivals and celebrations. They enslaved the people for hundreds of years with thousands of castes, lakhs of traditions, and crates of deities. The new missile and the new constitution experimented on the society during this period was the Manusmriti. To counter Buddhism, Manu Dharma was injected into the people's blood with the fear of a possible revolt in the future. And realizing that fear works where devotion may not, they spilled blood on this land with the excuse of sacrilege of the Vedas and crossbreeding of castes. Thus, the kings and Rajgurus made the supremacy permanent in the society for a few centuries through the caste system, by inciting fear and enslaving the people. Education was transformed into a luxury available only to certain sections of the society, and that too just for men. Women, who comprised half the society, were confined just to the kitchens and the bedrooms. Fearing that they would not have their way if women were given a role in governance, to suppress their thought processes, sanctity was ascribed to horrific social evils like child marriage, sati sagamanam, where the wife would self-immolate on her husband's funeral pyre. That is why even to date, few girls still stuck in these retrograde thought processes would blindly agree to marry a man chosen for them by their father. After getting all the people under their thumb, the Aryans understood that they would be safe only if they had the kings also under their control. They sought to utilize their intellect to subjugate the kings, who would use their force to stay in power. They became the secret keepers of the royalty and remained privy to all that happened, including the construction plans of the palaces and hidden escape routes and dungeons and passages. To ensure that the kings parted with their financial status, they were made to hide their wealth in temples. Enjoying this hidden wealth and living off the temple lands, the Aryans accumulated their own wealth without much effort. Gradually, there came a time when the kings could not even censure the Aryans, who could cast an evil eye on their wives and children as well. The struggle for power between the kings and the Rajgurus caused instability in the society as well. As the kings started feeling threatened, the prominence and comforts given to the Rajgurus started reducing. As the kings could not stand their high-handedness anymore, they started to expel the Aryans from their kingdoms. They spread to all the kingdoms across the country. The 5 principles of the Aryans, previous birth, rebirth, fate, conscience, and superconscience, could no longer be used to control the kings. So they bided their time and decided that to regain their food, sleep, and material comforts, the kings needed to be dethroned. The resultant scheme was to invite alien Muslim rulers to invade the Indian subcontinent. This started the Muslim era. The Indian subcontinent was already weakened through splitting into hundreds of kingdoms and into thousands of castes. The Aryans further helped the Muslim invaders to conquer them easily. Some kings sacrificed their lives fighting valiantly for their land, while some selfishly sought refuge from the sultans. Some even changed their religion and changed colors as Nawabs and Subedars to safeguard their power and their kingdoms. For a few hundred years thereafter, the Aryans became a part of the Muslim courts. The Aryans, who had earlier envisioned their unfettered supremacy in the Hindu society, had realized their mistake. Until then, they had had the society in their grip under the garb of religion, customs and traditions. But none of these would work with the Muslim rulers who belonged to another religion. The Muslim rulers started converting people indiscriminately. The ill-gotten wealth of the kings, hidden in the temples and the lands who served in the name of the god, were all confiscated by the Muslim rulers. As their powers started to grow manifold, the Aryans started to weaken further. The sultans left and the Mughal emperors arrived. They married Rajput princesses and further cemented the foundations of Muslim rule in Hindustan. Deprived of all comforts, the Aryans decided to use religion again to evict the Muslim rulers. The wars being fought by the Hindu kings for their own power and position were given a religious hue, and this destabilized the society further. The common man who understood that the kingdom is not for the people and it is just a game of chess between the royals, regardless of king or religion, reconciled themselves to living as slaves. After the stringer of Muslim rulers emerged victorious, the entire Indian subcontinent came under Muslim rule. Aryans' situation worsened further. Under the Muslim rule, all the customs and traditions force-fed to the Hindus started to fade away slowly. Aryans could not digest widows of martyred kings sitting on the throne. If the women, dubbed for thousands of years as weak, come to power and get used to it, the system carefully built by them was likely to collapse, feared the Aryans. But they did not know how to confront and defeat the Muslim rulers. It was then that they decided to seek help from foreign rulers once again. They invited the Britishers to occupy India. The British era started. By inciting the British, who had arrived at our doorstep just for trade, and without a single soldier against the Muslim kings, the Aryans helped them occupy 30 lakh square kilometers of undivided Bharat in just 30 years. Forgetting unity, land that was in perpetual internal strife came under the rule of the British. The British, who followed the same divide and rule policy that the Aryans themselves were masters at, would be a friend if it benefited them. The Aryans perceived wrongly that there would be no dearth of their three comforts. But the British, who were aware of nature of the Aryans beforehand, realized that, based on necessity, they would use the French or the Dutch and stamp the British on the back. That's why, as soon as India was in their grasp, they threw out the Rajgurus and appointed whites as viceroys and governor-generals. The Aryans, who had lost their power, reused the festivals and customs they had exploited in the religion era to incite people and raise the curtains on a civil war. Apart from looting all the wealth of India, the British started to alter the conditions here to unrecognizable levels. The Indians, who were either Hindus or Muslims until then, were now being converted to Christianity. Because of this British rule, several cultures, languages and ideas started to enter the country. The Aryans were shaken to see people of all religions and castes becoming educated, studying in the convents established by the British. More than anything else, education for women, abolition of sati and of child marriages made them insecure. They wished to stop the British at any cost, but could not find anyone powerful enough to do it. During this time, one boy was observing the situation keenly. He was a heir to generations of oppression. He was smart and intelligent. He was Bhimrao Ambedkar. As he studied the society and history, he understood that the Arya Brahmins could rule the society for thousands of years because of their monopoly over knowledge and science. He understood that they could run the society in whichever direction they chose as they had education in their hands. He decided to follow the same path and right the wrongs that had been done in the past. He studied hard and attained 18 degrees. Just as the Rajgurus had joined the kings to control the society, he took the side of the British and commenced correcting the situation in the country. Fighting the kingdom structure from within, he started to destroy it completely. After 200 years of rule, when the situation demanded that the British leave India, Ambedkar, like the Buddha, unfolded the qualities of humanity era from within himself. With the wisdom gained, he wrote and took the country into the Constitution era. The nation entrusted Ambedkar with the task of creating the Indian Constitution. Ambedkar knew that the reasons for the current state of the country was archaic kingdom structure and the Rajgurus that ran the system from behind the scenes. So he made watertight plans to ensure there was no place for this structure in independent India. He constructed the articles of the Constitution basing 60% on the Sanatana Dharma and Hinduism. Another 30% used as laws, such as the Criminal Procedure Code (CRPC) and the Indian Penal Code (IPC), to eradicate crime from the culture slowly. Remaining 10% is intended to enhance humanity amongst the people. An example for this is a punishment meted out to rapists. Prior to the birth of the Constitution, if a Brahmin raped a minor girl, there was no rule to punish him under the Sanatana Dharma. He is an important figure in the society. He is a person of great intellect. He agrees it was a mistake, they would say, and let him off. But after the Constitution was implemented, major changes were made. In 1970, if a similar case occurred, it incurred 2 years of imprisonment. By 1990, the same crime invited a 5-year prison term. After 2015, life imprisonment and even capital punishment is being implemented. After a few years, they might even place a gun in the victim's hand and tell the victim to legally execute the perpetrator. Ambedkar had made provisions this way in the Constitution to eradicate crime from the society by ourselves slowly. Similarly, he ensured governance for the people, of the people, and by the people. He gave democracy to the country and ensured there was no prerequisites of education, wealth, caste, or religion to be an elected representative of the people. Thus, if a person is good, is aware of the problems of the people, and could earn their trust in alleviating these problems, he could be their representative. He created a system whereby such people's representatives would stay with them, understand their plight, and take steps to help them. To eradicate the caste system implemented by the Aryans, he made untouchability a crime and provided reservations for the downtrodden sections of the society. He paid special attention to the first division created in the society and the root cause of all evil, which is the male-female divide. And that is why, through the Hindu Code Bill, he destroyed the division totally and tried to give equal rights to women in property, opportunity, education, and possession. Ambedkar dreamt that women, who constitute one half of the nation, should achieve half a share in all fields of the society. They should garner equal positions in all the 4 pillars of democracy, namely the executive, the legislative, the judiciary, and the media. The Aryans will keep trying to ensure this doesn't happen. But at least in this Constitution era, we all should work towards this goal dreamt by Ambedkar. That will be the day when we would have achieved real independence and would become a real democracy.